Hello students, so in this video we'll be discussing your cementum and alveolar bone. Both very small topics, right, but important. Cementum, as the name suggests, your cementum, it is basically first and foremost, it is an avascular mesenchymal tissue. Avascular mesenchymal tissue, that is, it doesn't have its own blood supply, first and foremost. Avascular mesenchymal tissue, which covers or which forms the outer covering of the root. Avascular mesenchymal tissue which forms the outer covering of the root, that is what is called as cementum. Right. From an entrance point of view, the most important topic regarding cementum will be the types of cementum. Right. The first classification for the types of cementum is that cementum is classified into cellular and acellular cementum. It is classified into cellular and acellular cementum. Very simple, as the name suggests. If it has cells, it's called as cellular. If it has no cells, it's called as acellular. Right? Both of them are avascular as the definition. So what cells are the basis or form the basis on which we are dividing the cementum into cellular and acellular? It is based upon the presence or absence of not cementoblast. It is based upon the presence or absence of the cementocytes. They are a different group of cells. They are not cementoblast, it is cementocyte. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. Okay, if the cementum histologically you can detect the presence of cementocytes, then they are called as cellular cementum. If histologically there are no cells, there are no cementocytes, then it is acellular cementum. Now, what is the difference between cellular and acellular is, let's say I have a cementoblast. The cells which form the cementum are cementoblast, and the cell which resorbs cementum are cementoclast. Now I am talking about cementoblast, which come to form the cementum. What this guy does is, he lays down a cemental matrix. Organic matrix. He lays down an organic matrix. You call it as cementoid. Some books it's given as cementoid. It forms a cementoid matrix over which it has to mineralize with your inorganic ions, that is mainly your calcium and phosphate. Once this organic matrix is formed, this cementoblast, he steps back. He moves back or retreats a little bit and comes over here and lays down a second layer of cementoid matrix. Meanwhile, the first layer, it undergoes mineralization. I'm discussing the basic of cementum formation. A cementoblast comes, not only one, a group of cementoblasts come, they lay down a matrix, then they move back, lay down another matrix, wherein the first matrix is mineralized by calcium and phosphorus ions. Okay, this is the normal formation. Sometimes what happens? Sometimes when the rate of formation is faster, what happens? As usual, your cementoblast, he comes, he lays down a cemental matrix. Then meanwhile, what happens? Another cementoblast comes and he lays down a matrix over this region. That is, this first cementoblast, he doesn't get enough of time to move backwards, to retreat backwards. Before he moves backwards, some other guys come and deposit a layer of cementum over him. Or in other words, the cementoblast, he becomes entrapped. Cementoblast becomes entrapped within the cementum matrix. The cementoblast becomes entrapped, engulfed within the cemental matrix, and such entrapped cementoblasts are referred to as cementocytes. Such entrapped cementoblasts within the matrix are referred to as cementocytes. Okay, So if the cementocytes are present within the matrix, it is referred to as cellular cementum. If there are no cementocytes within the matrix, it is referred to as acellular cementum. That is the first classification. And this cellular cementum or the acellular cementum is present towards the cervical region of the root, is present towards the cervical region, that is coronally near the crown, whereas cellular cementum whereas cellular cementum is present towards the apex or the apical region. Towards the top half or the coronal half, you have acellular cementum, and towards the bottom half or the apical half, you have your cellular cementum. This was the first type of classification of cementum. A little bit easy. Second classification is a little bit complex, and it was given by a scientist called as Schroeder. Schroeder's classification. This Schroeder, he gave a complex classification of cementum, in that he classified the cementum into multiple types based upon cells and fibers. He gave this classification based upon the cells and fibers which are present in cementum. First, I'll just write down what are the types, then I'll explain it to you. The first type, as given by Schroeder, was your acellular afibrillar cementum. Acellular afibrillar cementum. Second one, acellular extrinsic fiber cementum. Acellular extrinsic fiber cementum. The third one was cellular mixed stratified cementum. Cellular mixed stratified cementum. Fourth one, it is cellular intrinsic fiber cementum. Cellular intrinsic fiber cementum. And the fifth type was intermediate cementum. The fifth type was your intermediate cementum. I'm sure you would have heard of these names, but now you should understand why this classification is being done. Alright, so he classified based upon the types of cells and fibers. For example, if the cells are present, what we have read, if there are cells, then it is cellular. If the cells are absent or no cells, then it is acellular. Same funda for cells. Fibers. He gave or he postulated that cementum has two types of fibers. It has intrinsic as well as extrinsic. It has intrinsic fibers as well as extrinsic fibers. Intrinsic means within or its own. That is, intrinsic fibers means the collagen fibers within the cementum. Its own collagen fibers are referred to as intrinsic fibers, whereas extrinsic fibers means from the outside. From the outside. What are those fibers which are present in cementum that come from the outside? I have told you, starting when we studied periodontal ligament, I told you your fibers of periodontal ligament which run from bone to cementum, they insert itself within the cementum and undergo calcification, and such fibers we refer to as Sharpie's fibers, isn't it? It is this Sharpie's fibers which are referred to as the extrinsic fibers in this classification. That is, they are actually the fibers of the periodontal ligament which are visible in cementum. If you cut a cross section of this cementum, these fibers can be visible, but they are not the intrinsic collagen of cementum. It is rather from outside, the Sharpie's fibers. Alright, so this extrinsic fibers are from the outside. That is how this classification is being formed. Acellular afibrillar, meaning no cells, no fibers. Right? The first one, acellular afibrillar. It has no cells and no fibers. And this cementum, this acellular afibrillar type of cementum, it is present in the coronal region near the crown. Acellular afibrillar cementum. Second group is your acellular extrinsic fiber cementum. That is, it has no cells, but it has extrinsic fibers, meaning it has Sharpie's fibers. from the periodontal ligament, acellular extrinsic fibrillar cementum. And this cementum, again, it is found in the coronal half, or you can call it as the cervical third of the root. It is found near the cervical third of the root, and its thickness is around 30 to 230 microns. Its thickness is around 30 to 230 microns. Third type of cementum is your cellular mixed. That means it has cementocytes and it has both intrinsic as well as extrinsic type of fibers. And this cementum, it is found towards the apical region of the root. It is found in the apical third of the root, and its thickness it varies from 100 to 1000 microns. Varies from 100 to 1000 microns. And you have the fourth type of cementum, which is cellular intrinsic fibrillar. That is, it has cells and it has only the intrinsic fibers. It has no extrinsic fibers. Please think. If I mention no extrinsic fibers, it should go through your mind. Extrinsic fibers means Sharpie's fibers. So no Sharpie's fibers means no periodontal ligament attachment. This cellular intrinsic type doesn't have a periodontal ligament attachment. That is, they are seen filling the resorption lacunae. They are seen filling the resorption lacunae. And the fifth type of cementum is your intermediate type of cementum, which has no specified structure. It has no specified structure, and it is found near the cementodentinal junction. It has no specific structure as such, and it is found near the cementodentinal junction. That is your intermediate type of cementum. Alright. The next topic in cementum is your cemento-enamel junction. This cemento-enamel junction, it is the junction, as the name suggests, the junction between the crown and the root. This is your cemento-enamel junction. Right. What I want to teach you all is the cemento-enamel junction is of three types. It is of three types. That is, the first type is when cementum overlaps the enamel. It is when the cementum overlaps the enamel. That is, if you look at this junction, if this is the enamel, the cementum will come and overlap the enamel like this. Cementum overlapping the enamel. And it is the most common type which accounts to around 60 to 65% of all CEJs. Most commonly found type of cementoenamel junction. The second type is your butt joint. When the enamel and the cementum meet at right angles or end to end. The enamel and the cementum meet at right angles like this. It's called as a butt joint, and it is the second most variety of cemento-enamel junction that is seen, and it accounts for around 30% of all the cemento-enamel junctions. It is the butt joint. The third type of cemento-enamel junction is your gap junction. It is the gap junction. Gap junction meaning there is a gap between the enamel and cementum, somewhat like this. There is a gap between the enamel and cementum, and it is found fortunately in the least variety. That is, it accounts for 5 to 10% of all CEJs. And in this type of junction, in this gap junction, if there is a gap between enamel and cementum, what is exposed? What tissue is exposed? It is present commonly within the enamel and cementum. It is the dentine. So if there is a gap junction, your dentine is exposed, and such type of tooth or such type of areas are most commonly associated with dentinal hypersensitivity. they are most commonly associated with dentinal hypersensitivity. That is due to this gap which is leaving the dentine exposed, the inner dentine exposed, leading to sensitivity. Alright, so these are the three different types of cementoenamel junction. The first most commonly is cementum overlapping the enamel, and the least one is the gap junction. The last point in this topic is that there is something called as a cementodentinal junction. This cemento-enamel junction that we have discussed, it is asked, okay, this is a previously asked question, the frequency, which is most common, which is least common, and all that. So this cemento-dentinal junction is the junction between cementum and dentine, as the name suggests. And a question has come from this topic is that there is only one point that you should know, is that the width of the cemento-dentinal junction, the CDJ, not CJ, cemento-dentinal junction, it is around 2 to 3 microns. It is very narrow, very thin. The width of your, or the thickness of your cemento-dentinal junction is that it is around 2 to 3 microns, and this has been asked in your exam. Alright, so if you have to study about cementum, I would suggest first study about the classification, which are the types and which type is found where. Two thickness I've mentioned, you have to read that. And the second thing, it is about the cemento-enamel junction and the cemento-dentinal junction. So that wraps up cementum for today.